Hi, class. Today we're going to be talking about jazz, race, and society in the New Era, or the 1920s. Another common name for the 1920s, also known as the Jazz Age, for reasons that we will soon get into. So, in order to talk about the origins of jazz music, we really want to talk about some of the historical factors that were weighing on Black experience in early 20th century America. So, in order to talk about that, we have to talk about the post Reconstruction experience. Now, Reconstruction being kind of the time of social, economic, legal rebuilding of the country after the Civil War and after the abolishing of slavery. And though Reconstruction itself did a pretty good job of restoring rights to newly freed Black people, with Reconstruction's end, there's an entry into a period known as redemption, where a lot of white politicians are trying to kind of rewrite, or not rewrite, but kind of bring back the antebellum status quo. And this takes the form of numerous things: economic systems like sharecropping, that sort of keep Black folks out of ownership roles, and sort of prevents them from accruing any real kind of like generational wealth. Jim Crow and very harsh segregation laws make things extremely difficult for just day to day survival of Black people in the South. And this is all beyond just the constant racial terrorism that they were experiencing through groups like the White Knights and the KKK and things like that. So ultimately, what we end up seeing is something called the Great Migration. Now, this map is a bit confusing. There are two Great Migrations, essentially, but the one we want to think about is this first wave, which is happening from about 1915 to about 1940. And this is a situation where jazz has its origins in New Orleans. It comes forth as a combination of a lot of Black musical traditions, Latin, Creole, even some European aspects, and they're all kind of mixed together in this melting pot that is New Orleans at the turn of the 20th century. However, as a result of this Great Migration, you start seeing a lot more of the innovation of and popularization in jazz music happening in places like Harlem and New York, the South Side of Chicago, these specifically northern places. And not only is this where a lot of intellectual innovation is happening with jazz music, but also who's listening to jazz music starts to change pretty significantly, i.e., white audiences are starting to get a lot more exposure to the genre. However, of course, Black influence had been present in American culture before. There is precedent for Black people influencing American culture. It's just what we want to focus on here is it was just never in the same kind of leading way that jazz music ultimately takes. But we have situations like slave music, hymnals, this type of spiritual singing was relatively common and well known throughout the South. At the same time, the banjo is something that is developed in African communities and developed into what we know as a banjo in the South in the context of slavery. So just the presence of the banjo in American music is essentially a footprint of early Black influence. Additionally, blackface and vaudeville, very common motifs seen together. Vaudeville being this sort of form of entertainment, sort of like a Saturday Night Live kind of sketch, kind of entertainment show, but commonly you have blackface, minstrelsy in it, and you actually do see actors trying to play themselves as though they are Black people effectively, of course, in a racist, caricatured kind of way. And one thing we actually see in that is Mickey Mouse is actually a reference in his early forms and much later forms to some of those initial vaudevillian depictions. Um, Additionally, you see these kind of tropes in literature as well, portraying Black people in these negative lights. So present in American culture, but maybe not leading it.